How am I supposed to tell people what they need if you're blocking the way? It's not whatever. Move. Move. Ugh, whatever. So this is probably my second Christmas ever in my own home. So I thought our stockings need a little bit of an update. So I thought I would kind of try my hand at making furry stockings. I saw a bunch of these like everywhere. So I thought I would share my little DIY with everyone so that you can make your own little furry stockings or any kind of stocking you want actually. I made two different sizes. There's this small one and there's also this larger one. This larger one is made from the stocking that I'm going to show you in just a little bit. And then this one I actually made smaller because it's for my cat. So without further ado, let's get started. So for supplies, you're going to need some fleece fabric or interfacing. You'll also need some lining fabric, some outer fabric, and some fur for my project, but if you don't want to use fur, it's totally fine. Also some ribbon, and it's optional to have one of these little wreath decoration things. I thought it would be super cute, and I thought it would add like a little nice touch to them. So you can find these just in like the little wreath section in the holiday aisle. For supplies or equipment, you're going to need a hot glue gun, some pins, some little sack things or what I use to hold my patterns down, but anything heavy will work. Some scissors, a stocking of your choice that you want to trace, some tracing paper or wrapping paper or any kind of big paper that you want to put your pattern on. And then you'll also need a ruler. I suggest using the ruler here, which is like this blue pattern grid looking thing, but you can also use a normal ruler too. Oh, and you'll also need a pencil. So first things first, you're going to want to lay your pattern, or not your pattern, I'm sorry, your stocking flat on your paper that you're going to trace this on. And then you're just going to trace this little stocking all the way around. You're just doing the boot part. Don't worry about the top just yet. We're going to go back and do that one. I like to just put dashes around everything just because it's a little bit faster and it's easier. And since this is kind of bulky, it's kind of hard to get like a line that's not all jacked up looking. I'm just connecting all of my slash marks so I can make a nice looking little stocking boot. And for the top of the stocking, it's really easy. You don't really have to trace it. Just connect the two lines and use a ruler to make a nice straight line. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to put seam allowance all the way around your stocking. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch on mine. Now for the top of the stocking. It's basically just a little rectangle, so you don't really have to trace all the way around it. Just make some little markings on each corner and then you can connect it with your ruler. And now once you get all that finished, you're going to want to add seam all the way around your pattern. And I'm using the exact same amount, which is 1/2 inch. And now, to make sure that everything matches up together, because you don't want to have to recut and try to pin things together and sew them together when they don't fit. So what I'm doing is just folding down one side of my top of the stocking just folding it down on the little seam line so that I can make sure I get a nice connection from the top of the stocking to the boot. So if both sides match, you're good to go. If not, just go ahead and make whatever adjustments you have to make sure that they both line up together. And don't forget your loop so that you can hang it on the wall. Mine is about 3 inches by 1/2 inch, and I just doubled up the 3 inches, so it's about 6 inches long. And I only added a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. And now you're going to want to cut it out of your outer fabric. Ta-da! And now to sew this thing up, you're just going to want to take it and then fold it right in half. What is this, like hot dog style? And then you're just going to want to sew all the way down this and make sure you're sewing 1/4 of an inch. And then you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut the bulk off of the side. And then once you're doing that, you're going to flip it all the way inside out, and then you're going to sew right down the middle of it. Now you should be done with that, and you can go ahead and start on the boot part. So you're going to take your fleece or your interfacing and you're going to cut that out and make sure you cut 2 pieces. And then you're going to cut the boot again, but in your outer fabric, make sure you fold it in half, that way you can cut 2 at the same time, it's faster. And you're going to also cut 2 of those. And now your lining fabric, doing the exact same thing, you're also going to cut 2. And now you have your upper part of your stocking to work with. So this is the fur part, which is kind of tedious and a little bit annoying, but you're going to have to comb all of this fur down. Make sure you don't get any that are like weird bunched up and funky looking. Just make sure you comb it down as flat as you can get it. And then you're going to take your scissors and then you're going to cut, I would suggest cut slowly. You're going to cut this all the way across. However, you're going to put your scissors underneath the fur. Try to get it underneath the fur as much as you can. You don't want to cut it just straight across because you don't want to have any just straight edged blunt cut fur. It looks trashy. So you want to make sure it's like a nice hangover. So you'll want to do this careful cutting all the way around your pattern piece, and you'll want to have 2 pieces. Your lining fabric with the top part of the stocking, and this one's far much easier because there's no fur to be wary of. You'll also want to cut this as 2 pieces. Now comes the sewing part. You're going to take your outer fabric and sew your boot all the way around. And now to make sure that there is not so much bulkiness whenever you're turning this inside out, you're going to want to cut that bulkiness off. So what I did is the same thing I did as with the loop. I'm going to cut right in between the sewing line and the edge of the fabric. And then I'm going to cut little itty bitty slits. Don't cut all the way through your stitches because that's not going to be good. You just want to cut just before you get to the stitch. And you're just going to do this on all the little curvy parts. So like the toe and then the heel. And now you're going to sandwich everything together. You'll have your fleece or interfacing on the bottom, and then you're going to have your lining fabric in the middle, and then your other lining fabric right on top, right sides together. And then you're going to sandwich all of that with your top layer, which is your other piece of lining or interfacing. gonna sew all the way around, but side note, be sure to sew 5/8 of an inch instead of 1/2 an inch. And then you're also going to leave a little opening on the side so you can turn it all inside out, just like this. And now you're going to do the exact same thing you did before, and you're going to cut around your little boot to get rid of that bulkiness. However, don't cut the little opening. I left that just how it is so that'll be easier to sew up when I'm finished. And now you're going to work on your top of the boot. So you're going to sew your little lining pieces together, and it's going to be the same seam allowance that you've been using, which is 1/2 an inch. And it's going to look like this. You can even press it to make sure it's like nice and flat. Now you're going to connect your 2 pieces of fur just like you did with your lining piece, except this one you're going to have to make sure all that fur is combed inside so you don't sew on any of those little pieces of fur. So now to connect your furry part with your lining fabric, make sure your fur is going up. So that means like little furs, you know, they're flowing upward. And you're going to flip that around. And then you're going to connect that to your piece of lining. And you're going to have to try to comb down the fur as best you can. It's going to be kind of hard since the fur is running upward, but with enough patience, you can comb it down pretty smoothly and connect it. And then you'll just want to sew it all the way across. So it should look something like this. And then once you get that done, you'll flip it over in half so it looks like this. And you're going to sew this all the way across on the other side. And make sure you do the same thing we did earlier, which is comb down all the fur. Oh, also I went ahead and sewed the fur going upward back onto the other side of the fur, just so that when you turn it inside out, it's less likely to roll the other way on that corner. So flip it inside out. And you're going to connect this to your boot, which is the outer boot, not the lining boot. Make sure your fur is going downward into the stocking and your lining is up. And then you're going to stuff that in your boot. And now you're going to connect everything. And I like to connect the side seams together just so I know everything's going to line up pretty good. And you're going to sew all the way across. And then we're going to do it again, which is take off the bulkiness. And I'm not going to cut my seams because I'm not going to really do any other kind of sewing stitching to kind of reinforce that. So I cut around the seams just to make sure they don't come undone. Ta-da! This is what you should have so far. Now we're going to connect our lining. And to do this, you're going to make sure your boots are facing the exact same way. You don't want one facing the wrong way. And you're going to take this and you're going to turn it inside out. Ta-da! Again, double check and make sure that these two line up. You don't want to have the wrong boot facing the wrong way. So you're going to stuff all of this inside just like you did earlier. Then you're going to connect your side seams. And also you want to make sure you put your little loop that you made earlier. And you're going to stuff this with the loop going downward into the stocking and the little end sticking up. You're going to want to tuck that as close to the side seams as you can get it. And this is also going to be on the back of your stocking, so make sure you put this in the back side, not the front. And then you're going to sandwich these together and then sew all the way around. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing I did earlier, which is remove the bulkiness. However, I'm not going to cut the fur part. I'm only going to cut the lining and interfacing / fleece part. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm cutting around my seams. Done, you'll have this strange looking thing, and you'll want to close that little opening that you left there. I just went over it with my machine, but you can do it by hand too. It's either or. And now you're going to want to put all of its little guts inside of the stocking. So once you get that done, you'll have a nice little boot. And this is what it looks like in all of its fame and glory. And then you'll just want to flip this inside out like that, and that way you have your little fur coming on the top of it and your nice little boot. Now this part's optional. I did sew on the inside of the corners, which I'll show you right here. I sewed the side seams on both sides, just the little corner. I used a little hand needle and some thread, and then I just made 2 little loops just to make sure that this lining and boot do not move around. And you don't have to if you don't want to, but you can. And then afterwards, my last piece was to attach my little wreath decoration on it, and I tried to make it at an angle because the boots are going to be hanging at an angle, so I wanted the little holly wreath decorations to like kind of stand straight, so I just made it at a little angle. And I connected this with a needle and thread. However, if you wanted to glue it, I'm pretty sure you could if you wanted to, but I just wanted to use a thread needle because I thought it would be a little bit more permanent, just in case my cat decides to chew on these and pull them down, which she is blocking the camera with her face. And there we go, a nice little stocking. And also I added a little ribbon. Mine's gold. I thought it would go well with the whole like red holly and the black stocking. And make sure you tie this kind of loosely around your stocking because you don't want it to get too tight, so when you stuff things in here, it's going to kind of, get bigger around. You don't want that little ribbon like getting your hand caught in there or, not letting you stuff anything in there because it's so tight. So make sure it's a little bit loose. And then I just used a hot glue gun to glue the little ribbon onto the holly piece so that it wouldn't fall off. And here's a finished stocking. This one's for my cat, so it's a little bit smaller. And then these are the ones that are the original stocking size that I traced earlier, and they're not small at all. So if you like this tutorial, make sure to like the video. If you guys have any suggestions or any kind of tips to make this a little bit easier or even a different way of making these, I would love to know. Definitely share anything you guys have to offer. I am totally open to anything. And let me know if you try this out. Happy holidays!